Exclusively on ESPN Plus, UFC 312, Saturday. Reigning middleweight champion Dricus du Plessis defends his title in a rematch against Sean Strickland. And Zhang Wei Li defends her strawweight title against undefeated Tatiana Suarez. UFC 312, Saturday at 10 p.m. Eastern. Buy it on ESPNplus.com/PPV.
This episode is brought to you by Love Hurts. Kiwi Kwan has had quite a career, from childhood roles in Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom and The Goonies to a recent Academy Award win for Everything Everywhere All at Once. But now Ki finally stars as a leading man in the film Love Hurts. Love Hurts is the perfect date night movie with its mix of over-the-top action, comedy, and a ton of heart. Love Hurts. Only at theaters February 7th.
Hello and welcome to the Oregonian Sports Podcast, Blazers 2025 Champions Edition. I'm Bill Oram, joined by Brenna, Greene. The Blazers, red hot and rebuilding, but not tanking. Brenna, the Blazers have won, we're recording this on Friday, have won 10 of their last 11 games, including 6 straight. They stand pat at the trade deadline because how can you break up this team? Are you in or out on the Blazers actually being good?
I think I am team. The last few years have been so miserable. Let's just not worry about it. That's what I'm team. Like, you know what? Whatever. Let's enjoy. I've officially thrown in the towel of being worried about the draft.
Yeah. Let's
just enjoy this streak that they're on. How many times have we gotten to enjoy the Blazers in the last, this is my 3rd season. The last time I can really think about enjoying the Blazers like this was probably when they had that streak at the start of the season 3 years ago, where they had the whole viral post-game interview where their entire team came around. Was it Jeremy who hit a game winner? Somebody hit a game winner.
They had 2 or 3 game winners in the first 10 or 15 games. And I think Anthony had a game winner. I think Jeremy had a game winner. The vibes were off the charts. I think they started 9-1.
Yeah.
22-23. And then it went downhill from there.
Yeah, it went to, yeah. So, that's the last time I was really truly able to enjoy this Blazers basketball team. So therefore, I'm like, you know what? We're just going to take the wins while we get them. Because who knows if they would have gotten the number 1 pick in the draft anyways. Mm-hmm. And by the way, they could still end up getting the number 1 pick in the draft. Weirder things have happened at the lottery. So
yeah,
who knows?
Yeah, I think you're mostly in the right place. I agree with what you're saying. I think that the best way for the Blazers, given where they are in terms of what they have and what they don't have, to rebuild and to find sort of a central talent to build around is through the draft. The most direct way to rebuild is to get a high pick and get a player who can be your center of gravity. I think that it's fair to ask and consider the question of what is lost by them skipping that step, because I think that's what's happening. I don't think they're going to make the play-in. They're 2.5 back of the play-in. They're 4 back of the 8 seed. The teams in front of them got better at the deadline. San Antonio got better. Dallas, didn't get better, obviously, but is still going to be deploying 2 Hall of Famers once Anthony Davis is healthy. I don't think the Blazers catch Dallas. I don't think the Blazers catch the Warriors now that the Warriors have Jimmy Butler. So I do think they might catch the Kings. The Kings aren't going to be better. So I think, so I don't think they're going to make the play-in, but I think they're going to be kind of in the mix or stay within sight of the play-in, which I think for all intents and purposes takes them out of the lottery question. Obviously, mathematically, it's possible. So I think it's fair to ask what is lost by them skipping the step of now they are sort of out of the tanking conversation, which is great from a viewer standpoint. It's great from a ability to enjoy this team standpoint, but is it great from a team building standpoint? It just changes the approach, because now the approach is going to have to be much more trade centric. And drafting well, by the way. Just because they don't have the number 1 pick doesn't mean they don't have a pick. They'll still have, like, let's say they have the 9 or the 8th pick.
Yeah.
There's good players there. Damian Lillard was not the number 1 pick in the NBA draft.
Yeah.
Nikola Jokic was not the number 1 pick in the NBA draft. So, and there's a wide range of, who those players can be. You have to draft well. So they could still draft well and find that player. But, like, the hang up I have is I don't think the Blazers have anybody. I would say the Blazers don't have anybody who has shown they can be that number 1 player.
Yes.
I won't close the door on the possibility that they have that number 1 player, that Shaedon Sharpe could become that player, Scoot Henderson could become that player. But so far we haven't seen it. They haven't proven that that's what they are. So, but because the damage is basically already done on the tank, like, this team is not going to be able to tank their way to having significant odds at the number 1 pick. Because of that, I don't see a great advantage to them tanking to be in a strong position to have the 8 or the 7 pick. If you're close enough to the play-in to give it a run, go for it. And so that's where I've kind of pivoted to. Yes, I think that the tank was the right approach. This team played above its heads. It exceeded that strategy. So now, heck yeah, go for it. Like, I don't think it's going to happen, but I think it's good. I think it's good for the young guys to have the experience of actually playing for something. Like, Toumani Camara and Denny Avdia are already obviously established. They're playing as, like, winning players already. But for Scoot Henderson and Shaedon Sharpe and Donovan Clingan, like, I think there is an intangible, immeasurable benefit to these games mattering as opposed to just playing out the string for the last 30 games. So I think it's, it wouldn't be the way I would have drawn it up. But given the events that have led to this point, like, there's nothing to do but try. And, like, I used a quote in the column today. It's the great, the great Jake Taylor quote from Major League. Well, I guess there's only one thing left to do. Go win the whole thing. Now, the Blazers aren't going to win the whole thing, but their version of go win the whole thing is make the play-in, make the playoffs.
Yeah.
And lose in the first round, because this is not a team that, should be, is not a playoff threat right now.
No.
But even the fact that we're talking about them being within striking distance of the play-in means that we have to rethink how we look at them. Absolutely.
I mean, yeah. I mean, the conversations that we've had over the last few weeks have it's a good, because I've slowly progressed to this point where you finally just kind of get to a point where you're like, well, I guess this is what we're doing now. Like, this has completely altered the course of their season. And, you have the option of not embracing it, which kind of seems a little like not worth your time or energy at this point.
Yeah. Like, and by the way, I'm that person. Like, I've been the old man yelling at the cloud about like, they're winning, but that's complicated.
Yep.
And it is complicated, but like, now that the trade deadline is passed and we know that they didn't get off of DeAndre Ayton, Jeremy Grant, or Anthony Simons or make any moves whatsoever.
Yes.
Like, what are you going to do about it? Like, I think that this franchise would be in a better place if they could have found somebody to take DeAndre Ayton. And I think that if you think DeAndre Ayton is the reason you're winning games, like, I think it would be worth like slipping back down in the standings to get off of DeAndre Ayton or to get off of the Jeremy Grant contract. Like, I think that would have been more important than winning these games.
Yeah.
But that tool is gone. Like, you're not going to be able to do that. So this is the team. This is the team the rest of the way. So what is there for them to do other than go win? And that's what I think that's been the switch that's flipped for me. Now that we're post trade deadline, there's nothing else to argue other than, you're too far from the top of the lottery to make a significant gain there. So the only thing left to do is just to play as well as you can and let the chips fall where they may.
Yeah, no, exactly. And, there is a certain point where I think, I think I speak for the common person here, that getting stressed out about winning becomes actually stressful about being stressed out about winning. Because it's like it's a feeling that doesn't make any sense to be stressed out about winning. Like, just rectifying that. I mean, it makes sense, but it's not it's not a feeling that's natural with winning. You're supposed to be excited when you're winning. Mm-hmm. And so Then when you are stressed out about winning, then it feels like even worse because you're in this like stressed out spiral about like, oh, I'm stressed out about winning. I feel guilty about being stressed out about winning. Oh, like why
But
am
I'm
I
enjoying this. Like, I'm
Yes.
enjoying this, but I'm not supposed to.
Yes. It's very weird. It's a
Yeah.
feeling that I can quite honestly say as a sports fan, I have never felt before.
Well, and it's antithetical to the entire
Exactly.
idea of
That's the word I was
sports.
looking for. Thank you.
And like I've had like so many. I think there's so much nuance to this.
Yes.
I think there's so much nuance, and I've had a lot of readers who have gotten after me for, wanting the Blazers to lose intentionally or to cheat. That's not what I think they should do at all, or what I wanted them to do even before the trade deadline. I'm just mindful of the fact that this is still a team that is very much in the rebuild, is still looking for its core pieces. And if you skip a step where you become kind of thorny and competitive before you actually have like, your core players, do you risk getting kind of caught in that middle of the NBA?
Yep.
And that's where, the challenge, the onus falls on the front office to be shrewd and calculating and very decisive with trades. This is a trading league more than anything else now. The Warriors added a future Hall of Famer, boom, because they traded for him. Luka Doncic is with the Lakers now. Anthony Davis is with the Mavs. Like, teams are acquiring stars through trade more than any other mechanism, more than drafting their own stars and more than obviously signing them in free agency. So the Blazers, maybe we need to think about this more as how do they get to a star via trade, in a year, in 2 years, and who is that star? But it is a little bit unorthodox to think of this team having almost like the exterior of the core, right? Like the Blazers roster is hollow in the sense that like it has the outer rings of a good team, but it doesn't have that like nucleus, that central piece.
Yeah.
And it's like building a house without a foundation. And so that's not sustainable.
It's a solar system without the sun.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, absolutely the same idea. And so, it's certainly possible. It's certainly doable. And they do have pieces to trade. They have pieces, I think they should have traded Robert Williams. Robert Williams, and we've talked about
You were on the record about this. Let the record show.
But obviously the calculation the Blazers made is that the value on Robert Williams wasn't high enough. Like, if you're going to get 2 second-round picks for Robert Williams, wait until the summer and try to get a first. Okay. I think that's mostly fair. Mm-hmm. I do think at a certain point you have some responsibility to the player. Robert Williams is healthy. He can be playing basketball. He's missed a lot of his career with injuries. He should be playing basketball. And with the Blazers, he's at best a part-time player. He's done everything the Blazers have asked. They rehabbed him. He's at risk of losing basically 2 years of his career in Portland. I think, there would have been, I don't want to say duty, but you could have done the nice thing and gotten him somewhere where he would have played. That said, he still has time left. He's not that old. He has time on his contract. Okay, fine. I can live with all that. I don't know where I was going with that. But the point is, I don't know what the point is because, like I said, I didn't know where I was going with it. What was I saying before Robert Williams?
Who? Before Robert Williams, our listeners are like, our viewers are like, I know exactly what you were saying.
No, what they're doing is they're tapping the back 15 seconds button, and they're like, this is so easy. I can check what he said. Why can? But bottom line, the Blazers are they're fun. Okay, I'm going to pivot. They're fun right now. They're playing hard. Their defense is off the charts. Their defense is off the charts. Mm-hmm. And so, lean in. They need to lean in.
Yeah.
I hope that's somewhere in the neighborhood of what I was talking about before I made my Robert Williams point.
What did you think about, we kind of touched on this a little bit, but just what did you think? I guess I want to get NBA Bill's thoughts on the trade deadline overall and what happened around the league, and then your thoughts on the Blazers not participating in the trade deadline at all. I think they were one of 4 teams that didn't make a move.
Yeah. And those 4 teams were Denver, which is, financially, kind of screwed.
Yep.
Orlando, which is just they have a team they like, and also just a
Middling.
notoriously difficult to deal with front office.
Yes.
Like they just are very stingy.
Yes.
And Brooklyn, which I'm stunned Brooklyn didn't get involved, and then the Blazers. So those are the 4. Overall thoughts on the deadline, one as an observer, it was just crazy. It was head spinning. There was an all-star moving every minute. It felt like, I can't recall a trade deadline that just had so much action.
Crazy.
And then so much action with players, with name players, right? De'Aaron Fox, Brandon Ingram, Chris Middleton's a name player. Kyle Kuzma, and granted, like Chris Middleton can't move anymore, and Kyle Kuzma's having one of the worst years of his career, but those are just players that you really know. And so like, it just was it was exciting because you're like, oh my God, like picturing Kyle Kuzma in a Bucks uniform. Kyle Kuzma and Dame used to work out together in Utah. Like now they're suddenly like, they're teammates. It was just fun. It was a fun trade deadline. I thought it showed a lot of creativity from a lot of executives, and there was a lot of different objectives. Like you saw a lot of teams trying to get below the tax. But there wasn't a lot of like with the Robert Williams point, there weren't a lot of teams like paying to get like role players. There were a few, but like teams like Memphis Memphis paid to get off of Marcus Smart. You had a lot of like kind of shuffling pieces. So to that end, there wasn't like a deal outside of like the Lakers paying an exorbitant price for Mark Williams. Like I didn't see examples that were like analogous to the Blazers waiting for a first round pick for Robert Williams. There just weren't those kinds of deals happening. Mm-hmm. But the sheer volume of trades was pretty shocking. I do think it's strange that with all of that movement, there wasn't a place for the Blazers to get involved. Yeah. Like I thought they would do, even if it was something small. Like I think there's a really strong case. Sure. I mean, or there's a really strong case to have traded Jabari Walker.
Yeah.
Great guy. Like, I mean, really hard player, plays really hard, but like, he's buried and he's a restricted free agent this summer. Like, what are you going to do with Jabari Walker? Like, if you could have recouped anything for him, like, I think they probably would have. So there must not have been demand, but like, that's the sort of thing I'm surprised they didn't do. Duop Reith has a guaranteed year next year, so I'm a little less surprised about that, even though he's similarly buried on the depth chart. Mm-hmm. But like Delano Banton, great example.
I was more so giving the example of last year when they picked him up.
Yeah. Well, and like that's the sort of move, right? And like, but that's the sort of move you can make when you have the ability to absorb contracts and facilitate deals. Like Utah was getting really creative and like just kind of shaving off second round picks and deal after deal after deal, and was very transactional. The Blazers are more stuck financially, because they have big contracts and then they have young guys who they like. So they don't have as many pieces that they can just sort of shuffle in and out, nor do they have the financial flexibility to get involved in those kinds of deals. And you could say that is, kind of a knock on Joe, that the roster is too locked for them to get involved. But that hasn't been the case every year. Like last year, they were able to be a little bit more involved. The year before that, they were a little bit more involved, picking up Matisse in the Josh Hart deal. So they're, the Blazers have operated that way. Just where they're at right now on a lot of contracts that frankly they shouldn't have, kind of kept them from getting there. So it's just a question of, okay, now what? What's going to happen in the summer? Like, I don't think the Blazers are like going to be sold that DeAndre Ayton is now just this like hard playing, this is him. Like he's been outstanding over the last 2 or 3 weeks. Like he's playing hard.
Yep.
He's rebounding at an extremely high level. If this was DeAndre Ayton that we've seen over the last couple of weeks is an all-star caliber player. Unfortunately, he's just not. That's not regularly who he is. Like It comes and goes, and it goes for these long stretches. And there's a reason he's in Portland. There's a reason Phoenix, gave up on him. And it was pointed out.
How'd that trade work out for them, by the way?
Yeah, I put this on Blue Sky, but like. And I reposted somebody else who made this point on Blue Sky, but I thought it was good perspective that deal, now that they've kind of unfurled it and they had to trade a pick to get off of Yusuf Nurkic, they traded essentially Tumani Kamara and DeAndre Ayton for Grayson Allen. Like, that did not age well for them. So even though I lament the Blazers having DeAndre Ayton at all, taking on DeAndre Ayton at least got them Tumani Kamara, and they, so that even though I think DeAndre Ayton obviously is not part of the Blazers' future, and he's a very tough player because of the ebbs and flows that I've talked about, the Blazers won that trade massively. Despite taking a loss as part of that trade, they won the trade in aggregate, no question.
Yeah. DeAndre Ayton, the team's unquestioned reality TV show star. So, did you see that?
No.
They did like
was that what they asked the players, like, who would be on a reality, who'd be good on a reality? I did see that.
Yes, and DA won by a landslide. And they did say in the caption like something about DA being on The Masked Singer, which I was hoping that a player was going to say that DA should be on The Masked Singer and give us some ideas of what his costume should be.
Wait, was he on The Masked Singer, or that's just what people want? Oh, okay.
I don't think he was on The Masked Singer. If DA was on The Masked Singer and I missed it, please alert me on the appropriate social media channels.
Dwight Howard was on The Masked Singer, and he came into Lakers training camp after that, and it had been like a thing in the summer, and he came in the fall, and like I remember asking him a lot of questions about The Masked Singer, including whether or not he got to keep the octopus costume, but I don't think he did. So I thought maybe I missed DeAndre Ayton being on there too. Yeah.
So now I need to I need someone to come up with a costume for DeAndre Ayton on The Masked Singer, because that's the next step here. Anyway, so sorry for that random aside, but I did it got my brain going. Shout out to the Blazers social media team.
They do a good job.
Yeah, I mean, now I forgot what you said because I got so excited about DA on The Masked Singer. Yeah, I mean, the week before everything kind of popped off with the trade deadline, I was talking with somebody who knows things around the league, and we kind of both came to the same conclusion. This is going to be a pretty quiet trade deadline.
Totally. Everyone thought that.
Everyone thought it, mostly because of the new CBA and how restrictive it is. Well, guess what? Now that looks like a narrative that was kind of put out there by the owners, because that it wasn't just Luka who got traded. As you said, it was an all-star every second. Now, obviously, some of those trades were a little bit, there's question marks there in terms of, did you get the most value for what you traded for?
Yeah, the Luka trade's insane.
The Luka trade?
Mm-hmm. That one's crazy. But like, the rest of it, like, the Pelicans get off Brandon Ingram, the Raptors, I think pay a pretty decent price there. The Pelicans did a good job. The Jimmy Butler trade, the Heat solved their problem. Basically, every player who we thought would be traded, I mean, I'm going to put the Blazers aside here because I understand like why the Blazers sat it out. But like putting it aside, the only player who I think we kind of all thought might get traded or would get traded and didn't was really Bradley Beal. And then I suppose to a lesser extent, Kevin Durant. But
Bradley Beal has a no trade clause.
Correct. But only that, like, I'm surprised that, I mean, like, you think Bradley Beal wouldn't like to be in a situation where he's a little more wanted? Like, I'm sure, like, I know that there's a list of teams. I'm surprised that Phoenix didn't find a way. My only point is, you hear a ton of names every year at the trade deadline, and 95% of them stay put. And this year, you heard a ton of names going into the trade deadline, and 95% of them got moved. It just was. Yeah. It was the inverse of what a trade deadline typically is like.
Yeah, the NBA actually took attention away from the NFL for once. That's
the Super Bowl week.
That's the real mark of a successful trade deadline, because everyone was so upset about the trade deadline being on Thursday, the Super Bowl week. And I feel like people haven't really paid attention to the Super Bowl this year because the trade deadline was so crazy. Which, if you would have told me that was going to happen a few weeks ago, I would have looked at you like you were insane.
Well, I would also say, here's a thought on the Super Bowl. I think it's gonna be a good game. I think it's a good matchup. I think people are excited for the matchup,
Yeah.
but I don't think it's an intriguing game. Like, so I don't
Yeah.
think the build-up is that interesting. Like, we know the storylines, we know the players, we know the stakes because we've seen it. And I think that it's like, all right, play the game. Like the Super Bowl usually has like, and I'm sure that if you cover the NFL or if you're a fan, a real NFL fan, like it's different. But for the casual observer, I don't think there's intrigue. Like I want to
No.
know who wins. I want to see the game,
Yeah.
but I don't think that there's like that sort of like that build up of. I don't think the week building up to it is interesting, like it is most years. I think the
Yeah.
game's going to be interesting.
Yeah. No, I feel you.
And I do want to sort of like paint the picture of why the Blazers trade deadline was disappointing. Because I think from a business standpoint and a financial standpoint, I accept it all. But if you take put aside the winning that has happened recently, rebuilding, part of the path of rebuilding is that you eventually transition to handing the keys of the team over to your young players, where you see more of your young players than you do of the veteran players. And still on this team, DeAndre, Jeremy, Anthony are three of the leaders in minutes. So are Tumani and Denny. But I kind of put Denny and Tumani in a different category because there's not a question about them and their growth anymore. They are there. They could be on a winning team, no question. They'd be starters on a winning team, no question. The question is with all the young guys. So I think that it's really just a matter of like the progression to handing the team over to them and getting the vets out of the way and taking kind of steps forward in your rebuild. This felt like another trade deadline of like, path of least resistance, waiting it out, kicking the can down the road, for understandable reasons, but it doesn't feel like progress toward what the team is going to look like in a year or 2 years. But then that is kind of hard to like disentangle from the winning. Because it's like, well, okay, fine. It may not feel like progress on the trade deadline, but the young guys are playing well. They're meaningfully contributing to some wins. The last 2 games, I would say that the winning has really been driven by, the young guys. Scoot was really good against the Pacers. Shaden was solid against the Pacers. Tumani's great every night. I thought Shaden was a huge part of the win last night against Sacramento. Obviously, Anthony got hot in the fourth quarter like he can do. But like, there have been games that I've been frustrated with where it feels like Chauncey is just riding DA, Jeremy, and Anthony. And I don't think that helps the young guys as much. Like that Phoenix overtime game was insane. Like, and I get it. It's overtime. You're trying to maintain some momentum, but like Shaden played 19 minutes. Klingon played 9. Scoot played great and only played 21 minutes. And like, and it was all the vets. It was all vets in overtime. And I get it, but it's like, that's not helping them.
It's not beneficial long term.
But like, I do think that the young guys have been able to really meaningfully contribute to these last couple of wins, and I want to see that continue. Yeah.
No, I mean, it's been a real glow up for everybody involved. Like,
so is Scoot good? Like, do we now think Scoot's good?
Look, I'm still not ready to like make any big Scoot Henderson proclamations right now because we have I knew we were going this direction at some point. Because we have this one body of work and now we have this new body of work. I need to see it sustained for another like week or 2 before I'm like, okay, he has really turned a page. However, I mean, it's been encouraging to say the least. But, I think it's fair when you have a year and a half of what it has been to be like, okay, I need to know that this is more than a hot streak. Now, obviously, like doing this over the amount of games he's done it is impressive. But I guess I just want to not get too high or too low. And by the way, that's what Scoot Henderson would say too. In fact, he's literally said that in
I like that
post-game.
you're so unimpressed by Scoot Henderson that it's putting you to sleep. I'm having a hard time getting my B-ball reference page to populate as it should, but I want to pull up his numbers over the last 13 games since his big. Why won't you bring up my? I'm gonna have
His
to.
39-point explosion.
Yeah, the 8 for 10 3-point game, but I'll get to this in a little bit. But like I think that. Oh, here we go. So it's 14 games. He's shooting 47% from three. That's
unsustainable.
Unsustainable. Because in the games, and he's averaging 16 points, 6 assists, a steal, and shooting 50% from the field and 47% from three. Ridiculous. If we go to the first however many games he played, he shot 29% from three, 30%, and 39% from the field. The only thing I'll say, because you're right, like you've got two like very disparate and conflicting sample sizes.
Yeah, diametrically opposed.
And kind of like with the Blazers as a whole, which one do you choose to believe? Do you choose to believe that the recent sample size is more indicative of what he, or in the case of the Blazers, they really are, or is? I'm confusing myself. Like, which one is more true? Like what you've seen lately, or the larger body of work that seems more indicative? The only thing I'll say is like, it's encouraging that like with Scoot, the good stuff is now, right? Like, it's not like it was at the beginning of the year and then he sucked and you're like hanging on to what happened at the beginning of the year. Like, it's trending in the right direction. And you're talking about a guy who turned 21 this week.
Yes.
So I think I buy that it's somewhat real.
Yeah.
Now, like, can he, but I mean, with Scoot, the question is not, can he be a 47% 3-point shooter? It's, can he be a league average shooter? Can he shoot 37% from three? And, he's been really good on the pull up. He was already a pretty good catch and shoot shooter. And then he's gotten really confident with the pull up jumper when defenders go under screens. They're going to stop going under on him. Like, that's what's going to happen. And then the question becomes, now can you create when when they're going over screens? And that's some of that basketball IQ that I think scouts are still a little bit split on. Does he have the decision-making ability to really create when defenses start zeroing in on him? And, I wrote a piece a couple weeks ago, kind of at the beginning of Scoot's hot streak, that asked a lot of these questions. And he has been terrific since then. Like, that story looks kind of ridiculous in hindsight. But at the moment, that's where scouts were on him. And I think a lot of them still have a lot of questions. And scouts are notoriously like kind of negative people. They're very stingy with handing out praise. But clearly this has been a remarkable turnaround for him. It's not a coincidence that it has coincided. Can something not be a coincidence if it coincides with the same root word? With the team's success. And everybody's bought in defensively. And I think that Tumani and Denny's defense has been extremely contagious. Jeremy Grant has been a more consistent defender. Scoot has been playing defense. Anthony tries, and like trying's half the battle. And then DeAndre's been trying. It's like, it just has, these things have kind of all come together at once.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know what else to say about it. Like,
it's been a explosive supernova on that team.
They've also been home, and they have,
some of it.
Well, they have. I mean, having a 7-game homestand is remarkable, and they've won 6 of the 7 games at home. Yeah. Like, and then the previous 4. So I would say 7 of their 10 wins have been at home. Then they swept that little road swing.
Yeah.
Which was not easy, by the way. But like, can the Blazers play 500 the rest of the way? Like, that doesn't get them in the play-in.
No.
But I think that's really positive for this team. Like, I think that's and we cannot overstate how nice it is that, maybe at the very end of the year we'll see, the primary guys sit. but like I cannot overstate how much more enjoyable the final months of this season are going to be because you are not going to have to invest in Ashton Hagans and Skylar Mays and Taze Moore and, Kelvin Blevins and, CJ
Look at
Ellaby
you,
and
man.
all these guys who got huge minutes on the Blazers and aren't in the NBA, because, the Blazers were so aggressively tanking at the end of the year.
So I want to read an exchange that I had last night because I think this illustrates this quite well.
Okay.
I said, I'm seriously so mind blown about what's going on with the Blazers right now. Do I need to start thinking about April basketball? ? Someone who I'm friends with in the media responded to me and said, yes, because the regular season will end in April, but you won't need to think about it past mid-April. I said, Jake, you have to understand, the past few years, the regular season has ended for the Blazers in January. Like, that is our existence. It's like, okay, we're done here. So long, folks. Enjoy the next 3 months of basketball because we will allegedly be playing it.
It's such a hilariously low bar. Like,
It is.
will the team be trying in the final half of the season is such a low bar, but it does represent progress. And again, I'm team big picture Blazers would be better off having a top 3 draft pick.
Yes.
Having Cooper Flagg, Ace Bailey, or Dylan Harper. One of those 3 guys.
Yeah.
I don't care which. The odds are against that happening now. And I think that limits their options. It slightly less flexibility in terms of how you're going to do this.
Might as well win the thing. Win the thing.
But it is offset to some degree by the experience of winning games.
Yep.
And there are other ways to get star players.
Now, obviously, we both know that has been difficult for this Blazers franchise to do in their history.
I had a reader email me, is it possible that you can do it without a star? That like this team, like I love Denny Advia, I love Tumani Kamara. Like these guys play so hard. Can you do it without a star? And it's such a nice idea.
It's a great
like,
idea. In theory.
It sounds lovely, and I want that to be true because I find the current state of the NBA to be a little bit distasteful. Right? It's all superstar, and it's not. But you have to look around the league and look at what works and who's winning, and I mean, it's not about having a star. It's about having 2 or 3 stars. I mean, teams with 2 stars, there are teams with 2 stars not making the playoffs. And so it's really, how do you get to that point where you are ready to add your go get your 3rd star? Like, and that's, to win a championship. And I think different fans have different expectations. I think a lot of Blazer fans, like, of course, they all want to win a championship, but they want a team that they can invest in, that's going to be in the playoffs every year, that's going to win playoff series, that's going to have a chance. And so, I mean, you need a star for that even.
Yeah, it's not possible. You have to have multiple stars in order to win. And as I've said, the Blazers have not proven to be able to get those stars in free agency. Do we all remember Roy Hibbert? There's a throwback for you.
I don't think it'll happen in free agency. It's going to have to be by trade.
It has to.
But and then it's just like, who are those players? Like, who's the next big star who could become available? And is kind of on the Blazers timeline. Like, who's a young star who might be on their way out in a year or 2 years or this summer? I mean, like Zion Williamson exists. Like, what is New Orleans going to do with Zion? Like, there's a risk associated there, but he's really freaking good, and if it's not him, then you just start kind of looking around like, who is it? Yeah. Is it Domantas Sabonis? And like, I understand that Domantas is maybe not, first team all NBA perennial player, but if you dropped Domantas Sabonis onto this Blazers team instead of DeAndre Ayton, that's a guy who almost makes you better but not good enough. I don't know. This is more like off-air brainstorming.
Yeah.
But if I'm a Blazers fan, so for listeners who I would encourage you to think who is going to be that next guy that gets traded, and do the Blazers have the assets to go get him? And I would argue that if they don't have the assets, they're very close, and they probably do have the assets. And then it's just a matter of executing the deal. Joe Cronin.
Which, hey, he's been able to execute some deals. None of them have come at the trade deadline.
Well, they've always been sellers at the trade deadline.
Yes.
And the Josh Hart deal, most notably. I think it's going to, and obviously they were buyers on Denny Advia, but it's going to be really interesting to see what this looks like when they become real buyers in a different trading window, whether it's this summer, next trade deadline, or a full year from now, when they presumably would have a full year from now, meaning the summer of 2026, when if they don't move off of these guys, they will have a ton of cap space, which can be utilized in a lot of different ways, not just signing free agents into that space. You can absorb contracts. You can use it to facilitate different deals. There's a lot you can do. But I think that is essentially it for the Oregonian Sports Podcast Blazers 2025 Champions Edition. Brenna, any parting thoughts? And I guess I would just finish with this. I assumed that post-trade deadline, my interest in the Blazers would drop off dramatically. And I'm not sure that's true, because now I'm interested in, can they keep this up? Can they keep winning games? So I think we'll be talking more Blazers the rest of the way. Surprisingly.
I have never been more interested in the Blazers during my tenure here than right now. I think. Obviously, the Damian Lillard trade was interesting, but it was interesting for different reasons. It wasn't interesting for it was not interesting for any exciting reasons.
Right.
At least now there's some good feelings along with that interest. So yeah, no, I agree with you. I think that we're gonna have a lot more things to say about the Blazers. We are at some point going to talk about college basketball in this podcast, I think. But right now we're just not gonna
Yeah.
We talked before and we decided, let's hold off of the Oregon Duckmen.
We can table that discussion for another
who
time.
Are not doing well. However well the Blazers are doing, the Oregon Duckmen are doing that way, but worse. If that
I like
makes
the Oregon
sense.
the Oregon Duckmen. I like the Duckmen.
The Duckmen.
We're gonna go with that.
So
Greene.
We'll lay off of them. I did drop them out of my AP top 25 this week.
Looked like you weren't alone.
And I was once again vindicated against Michigan. So there you go.
She is Brenna Greene. I'm Bill Oram. Thank you so much for listening to the Oregonian Sports Podcast. Shout out to the Idaho Falls Spud Kings. On to the playoffs in the NCDC Mountain Division of the USPHA. Thanks for listening.
A, B, C, D, E, F, G.